both local and from places far away to talk about advocacy and infrastructure and things that really benefit walk bike culture. And so we want to remind folks about the membership page. If you managed to get here and are not a member, please check out the membership page. Seth is going to drop the link in the meeting chat. If you need to renew, please renew. Your membership goes to support a lot of different projects in town and other subgroups, in fact, as well. So we do very much appreciate you staying current with your membership and encourage other folks to join. It's a small contribution that provides a lot of benefits at a lot of businesses in the community and access to resources and whatnot, and staying informed about things that are happening in terms of local government, issues before local government, projects that are happening. We try to keep folks abreast of those and whatnot. So please check out the link that Seth dropped in the chat for upping your membership. And there's also the board member ballot form. So of course, an election is part of this annual meeting, electing our board members. And so you can, Seth is going to drop the link to the ballot. So please check out the ballot there and participate in electing your board to help steer the organization and give a voice in our community through these folks who volunteer their time. And I can tell you, as someone who's been a board member for 5 years, it's wonderful when people step forward, and it's wonderful when people participate in the voting process, right? So it's one thing for people to step forward and to volunteer to be on the board. It also means something very tangible when you vote and you say, I'm going to participate in that democratic process of helping steer the organization. So please do remember to vote. And now I'm going to hand it off to Seth, who's going to give you some updates on some various things that are happening in the WBWC.
All right, I think I'm unmuted there. Well, as was mentioned, we recently changed our name after years of talking about it. From Washtenaw Bicycling and Walking Coalition, which was always a mouthful, to Walk Bike Washtenaw. And you probably have seen our updated logo that reflects those changes. So that's the biggest news here. And we'll be slowly doing updates to the website to reflect the new name. And hopefully some swag is on the way too. And then also wanted to thank our sponsors this evening, Sick Transit Bicycles, Urban Rider Cargo Bikes, Bivouac, Ipsy Running Company. They've got some prizes that we'll be giving out a little bit later. We've got 2 free tune-ups at Sick Transit, Ready to Ride starter kit from Urban Rider, as well as a Lumos Kickstart helmet from Urban Rider, $25 gift card to Bivouac, running gear from Ipsy Running Company, and then Walk Bike Washtenaw is going to be giving away 2 copies of the books, Strong Towns books, which is the organization that our speaker works with. The first being Strong Towns, a bottom-up revolution to rebuild American prosperity. If you haven't read it, check it out, it's great. And then also his second book, Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. So we've got 2 copies of those that we'll be giving out as well. And now I can introduce our speaker, Mr. Norm van Eeden Petersmen. He's from Delta, British Columbia. He's the member advocate at Strong Towns. And he is a pastor and co-founder of Deltons for People-Oriented Places, also known as DelPop. And the co-founder of the Strong Towns Toastmasters group. So this evening he'll be talking about the built environment as an enabler or disabler of people. So I'll pass it from Mr. Peterson to Mr. Petersmen.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Seth. And good evening and Hello to every one of you. I'm so glad to be able to join you for this. I want to begin with something that you in Michigan might not find all that surprising, which is that I shovel snow. And in Vancouver, where I live, we don't have to do it very often. And oftentimes we are able to simply wait for the rains to show up and wash away the snow, and then go about our merry business and wait for spring to come in February. But in a part of my community, our neighborhood has a program called Snow Angels. And as part of that program, I get a list of a number of seniors whose front yards I shovel with my son. And I've enjoyed doing it. It's no problem doing it. But it has been revelatory in so many ways to confirm for me the challenge that we face in terms of the way that our built environment either enables or disables people. And this became really clear in the story of Maria. Maria is one of the four women that I shovel for. And she was crossing a street from the village core back to her home at the crosswalk with the flashing lights when she was plowed into by a driver driving at speed, but into her without her being able to do anything in response. She's a senior. Her life was immediately upended by this action. She was harmed by a negligent driver and confronted with her new disability, her body being broken in this way. She was now facing the disability that comes from the way that we've built our built environment. And it was somewhat troubling or challenging for me because she would apologize that she wasn't able to do the work of clearing her front driveway. And yet I saw for her the new challenges that she faced on a daily basis to navigate a world that suddenly had become so much more hostile to her. She was no longer driving. She had no expectations that she would be able to drive. She was fearful of going out onto roadways, and yet that was her only option, even within a village, because we had not for generations provided the basic things like either a sidewalk or a commitment to slow neighborhood streets. She was disabled physically, yes, by her injuries and also by the effects of her aging, but she was also disabled by the built environment around her. She could walk, as I met her, within limits, but she didn't trust herself to go out onto the streets without sidewalks. She had no separated side paths to connect her home to the village core where all of her supplies were. And on top of that, the psychological trauma of being struck was still on her mind. The feeling of being pinned by a vehicle, of being plowed into and then pinned by a vehicle, was fresh for her, barring the way to her full participation in her community. Here was a person restricted by health issues. That's fairly common. People in various periods of their lives face this type of disability where health issues will limit one's abilities in various ways. She was also restricted by the hazards introduced by snow, temporary, 2 weeks, tops. But more profoundly, she was restricted by a built environment that showed a different face when she ceased to drive. And that's what I want to talk about this evening with you, because you face this where you live as well. A built environment that disables rather than enables people to live and thrive and prosper where they live. I watched a recap of last year's Walk Bike Washtenaw County meeting. And in that meeting, your presenter talked about the mindset shift that needs to occur to reframe how people think about the death toll and trauma attributed to crashes on our streets, roads, and highways. We're quick to say, so-and-so was not a statistic. Maria is not a statistic, and yet we shrug at the thought of a senior citizen being struck by a vehicle in a crosswalk with lights flashing and just simply go on and say, well, let's see what happens next. As Councilmember Kathy Griswold said after the presentation last year, I'm on council right now, and there's a lot of pressure right now to deliver safer solutions. And she shared that there's a new city administrator, and she was hopeful that he would be more involved in the operations and ready to act. I also read about your community that A2 Safe Transport was formed after the death of a local high schooler. who was struck and killed while crossing Fuller Road near Huron Parkway in late 2016. And so after that galvanizing tragedy, resulting in a new group forming and other actions being taken, you could in some way say that what I can offer you as an outsider tonight is a 6-year check-in on your progress in Ann Arbor. Are you making changes to the built environment to enable seniors, children, those without vehicles, those who are made vulnerable by the built environment in your city? Are you making changes to enable them to participate fully in so many more things? There was a newspaper article about the efforts that were being made in your community, and someone named Stephanie Preston was quoted. She said, "The city has enough money. You need to implement some safe crosswalks," she said, in response to a report that had come out that offered no further solutions. She said, "We have the money, we just need to do it. It doesn't need another step of study and processes and grants. We don't want any more studies. We want crosswalks to be improved. Please put it in the next budget cycle." And she's not alone. In our community, many communities, this is a common refrain, but her words were strong, weren't they? We don't want more studies. We want crosswalks. 6 years later, from when this teenager was struck and killed, has your city administration concretely changed your city? Literally, in some cases, by identifying gaps in sidewalks and filling them with concrete, or using concrete to form barricades and to increase at targeted intersections the pedestrian safety and the viability for those that are using the street in non-motorized ways. And so tonight I want to go through this question. The item on the left is not from your city, but the item on the right is. And we have this to say, that shame is not a suitable solution. Telling people to simply stop doing something, to never walk unless the right signal is shown, or to make eye contact, not body contact, almost said with a glibness, to be sure that drivers see you before crossing the street. Isn't that an impossible demand? Eye contact with drivers. I've seen the way that some of the vehicles are tinted in Michigan. I've known what it's like as a driver to not fully be able to see where a pedestrian is. Making an impossible demand is not a solution. My sister-in-law wrote an article about this, and she said, if some stop for you, but not all, you're not safe. If most slow for you, but not all, you're not safe. If, whether you are present or not, automobiles slowly pass by, you are safe. This is how we go about changing this pattern. This is how we go about changing what people experience on a day-to-day basis. This is how we enable rather than disable. It is by changing the built environment so that vehicles at key places will pass slowly by rather than requiring on them to have eye contact with you or you to make sure that you step out at just the right moment so you're not struck and disabled. What does it mean to be disabled by the built environment? I say we can be actively disabled by design standards, or, as is even more common, surreptitiously disabled by reinforced assumptions about safety and vulnerability. Let me explain that a moment. In the background of this is a picture from River Road in my community. And it's on the route that my son and I bike along when we go to his school if we pick up another boy. Robbie loves to go biking with us, and yet this spot on the road terrifies me. Why is it that the hydro pole is there and not on the street? There could be a small little bump out, which ironically would slow the vehicles that pose the greatest threat to us. You can see it in the distance, the garbage truck coming up. What you can't see in the photo is that there's a curve just before this. And yet here in this moment, a work crew, by means of a design standard, said, yep, this is exactly where this pole belongs. And the repaving crew said, yep, this is exactly how we repave this section of the road. Disabling anyone pushing a stroller. My son will ride on the left side unless I yell at him, or else on the right side of that post. And yet both times I feel this great threat in my heart where I wonder, is he going to clip his handlebar and get sent spilling onto the road? That's another form of disability, isn't it? And certainly the opposite of being enabled. He is being surreptitiously disabled because his I would say, just protective father is saying, I don't think I want you to be doing this route regularly. And that's what I mean about these reinforced assumptions about safety and vulnerability. And the challenge is, I think Fred will be presenting some stats, some reports, and update on studies that are being done. And yet what we don't see is often so critical as well. How many people are choosing not to go by this path? And this is no exception. It's everywhere, isn't it? I'm sure Ann Arbor has many places like this as well. When people choose not to do something, they are invisibly doing so. And yet their lives are shaped by this exclusion. Maria, who I talked about just a little bit earlier, lives just 2 blocks over from this place, and would, when she was passing through on her way to the village, have passed through at this key juncture. Now, for many reasons, she does not move on foot to get throughout the village. And yet this pole is a clear example of how our city and our practices are set up in such a way to prevent many of the types of trips, many of the types of movements that otherwise would occur. But it's not all bleak. Action can be taken at low cost. Action can be taken at low cost. I love the image on the left in Sydney, Australia, little potted plants used to demarcate a new use of a space. After all, the street is ours. Let's use it as we see fit. And you can tell, evidently, there's enough space for vehicles to still use that area, and yet now for cyclists, including children, to pass by. Or the image in the background there. They're garbage cans. Stick them in the way, and you create a new opportunity. And there you see in the middle a vehicle set there as a parked object, a parked hulking mass of steel and aluminum and rubber protecting this new pop-up bike lane. Action can be taken at low cost. And this is where I want to offer a suggestion for you as an advocacy organization. Start with something, whether potted plants or garbage cans, before graduating to full installations. Reach out to your city council members, your administrators, others that will listen with pictures, with identified segments. Say, can we do it here? Plan demonstration events. Under this heading, make the good visible before you make it permanent. The roadway industry is capable of getting an entire highway interface constructed from a set of drawings. They don't have to display it ahead of time. They don't have to create it with cones first. They just do it because these are entrenched behaviors. But as we try to change the built environment with new forms of behaviors, new forms of construction, we need to make the good visible. And you do that through these types of pop-up demonstrations. Make it visible even before you make it permanent. That way you can learn from any mistakes. You can figure out, oh, that wasn't the optimal setting for that. No problem, we'll move the garbage can. And so 6 years later, this high schooler was struck and killed. Is Ann Arbor taking the lead and installing what I like to call slow lane installations rather than bike lanes? No, they're slow lanes. They can be used by many different forms of transportation. People running or jogging, people on electric scooters or just regular scooters, people rollerblading, slow lane installations. And again, make the good visible before you make it permanent, like here on Hornby Street in Vancouver, where they've gone and actually made it permanent. And I'll tell you what, it's wonderful. And also to think about, how do we find ways to open our streets? We talk about road diets. And I understand there's reasons for wanting to think, oh, we're slimming down the lanes or we're doing other things that resemble a diet. But who voluntarily signs up for a diet? No, we are opening the streets. We are making them, enabling them for people of many different uses. We are making them more productive. That's what it is to have open streets, not to have a road that is stuck, poor sap, on a diet. Do we enable or disable? We do this in our built environment all the time, don't we? To enable construction of new housing in Ann Arbor, major changes have been made to University Avenue. I went and took a look on Google Maps, and you can see quite plainly they have taken an entire traffic lane and just made it not a traffic lane. So you can take that to your city council and say, I know you can do it. I know that you can do it. Construction crews run pilot projects every day within the built environment. And so the question is, why not for transportation, or we can say, why not for active transportation or enabling transportation projects? Try it. If they can close this lane for weeks on end, if not months, and this is a road that has a bus route on it, is a fairly vibrant, bustling activity. Notice that truck has more space than the pedestrians that are crossing there, but I digress. 6 years later, is your city taking any action to reduce lane widths? We use this image at Strong Towns often. Both of these pictures are 20-mile-per-hour zones, but only one of them is designed like it. Each of them might have a sign saying 20 miles per hour. But guess which one actually feels like a 20-mile-per-hour street? We need to reduce our lane widths and do so in many different ways. Do so with, like I said, potted plants. Do so with little pop-up chunks of plywood. Get the community involved. Temporary retrofits. Say, let's do it for the month of July and August. We'll narrow some of our roadways in order to then open up the streets for other uses. In part, to give our sidewalks a bit of relief where sidewalks do exist. Especially during the pandemic, we noticed in our community, but I'm sure it was widespread, that sidewalks became contested space because cyclists wanted to use them, rollerbladers wanted to use them, and yet they were prevented. And some of the more forward-thinking municipalities said, well, we'll take a little bit of roadway. But oh, what a tragedy it is that even those small advances were then reversed so quickly and without as much as a murmur. Also at Strong Towns, we say if you need a sign to tell people to slow down, you designed the street wrong. This is why it's so essential to understand that it is the built environment, the way that it is, the wood, the trees, the grass, the concrete, and the asphalt that determines the actions of people far more than what we might do through campaigns, through speed studies, through signs, through shaming campaigns, all of those types of things. Build a better environment. Do so with things like curb extensions. These are ones as they've been built in, made permanent, and yet they can be done with cones. Narrow the intersections quickly with cones, and then eventually with more permanent installations. And notice the one on the right is one that I am especially a fan of. It captures rainwater to hold it for longer, so that way your storm sewers are benefiting. It holds a place for trees as well as for other grasses and other growing things. So that way you have in time, the shade that will bring. They've even added seating, and they've made that seating into something more fortified so that those that sit on that seating facing towards the buildings, towards the places where people gather, are protected from the passing vehicles nearby. And this one also gets points for having these bollards here, further protecting people. Or here you have it in other forms, having a sign as well as a neighborhood box or a mailbox and all of the other items that help people to say, I feel safe here. Notice how much narrower this road has become through this simple curb extension. What about neighborhood roundabouts? The one on the left is out of Utah. This was a hack job, a tactical urbanism job where members of the community got together with chalk and created their own roundabout to disrupt the speedway and turn it back into a neighborhood street. And these things work. You can see on the left a more established version of it in Vancouver. And yet these are the ways that we are able to change our built environment, and in so doing, enable many, many different forms of active transportation. I love these. These are simple, modest, yellow, awesome blocks of awesome. The city of Calgary produces them themselves. They are stackable, movable, and deployable by city works crews, and yet they allow rapid installation of enabling improvements to make crossings easier for walking and rolling. I was struck by the fact that we talk about traffic calming, but let's talk about enabling transportation options, not calming the vehicles, but enabling the people. And guess what? When you put your emphasis and your focus not on slowing the cars as the only goal, but actually on enabling people to do many diverse forms of movement and gathering on your streets and on your places, what will happen is that drivers will slow. When you install these yellow curbs or curbside extensions or whatever it looks like, you will see a speed slow. Narrowing intersections, narrowing crossings, narrowing streets, these will enable many more users. What about mid-block crossings? The sweeping curves of suburbia, parkways that offer no picnics nor peace, boulevards where none may stroll. What about a mid-block crossing? Did a little bit of sleuthing on Google. I couldn't come visit you in Ann Arbor, but I could by Google Maps, and I noticed that just a short distance from the university on Washtenaw Avenue, which is why I picked this one, there's a half-mile stretch between marked crossings. A half a mile. The presumption being that if anyone is walking in any of these places where there's all sorts of other activities going on, student gatherings, all of that, that this idea is that this is a moat and no one may cross except here and here. Remember the sign saying, don't cross unless it says to cross. Well, that requires that you cross at those crossings. Here, for example, at Midway Point, the most logical place for there to be a crossing, there's none. You can cross 1/4 of a mile in either direction, but not here. And if you do cross here, you'll be blamed if you're struck and killed. I love this sign. Well, I don't love it, but the sign reinforces. I actually saw the sign and thought, oh, did I miss a crossing? But no, that sign's not there to designate that people are crossing at this place. No, it's saying they're over there on the sidewalk. So that way the driver is capable of passing on through. Don't you think this particular location on Washtenaw Avenue would be a perfect demonstration project by, say, an advocacy organization caring about these types of things in Washtenaw County? I mean, if you know of any, this might be one location for that. Now this I love. This is truly something to celebrate. I found this on your website. This is something to build upon. A walking map, just creating a literacy within your community of places that connect to other places by means of walking or cycling or rolling. In our community, we have a cycling advocacy organization that I'm a part of called Hub Cycling. And every year we have a big campaign called Ungap the Map. Ungap the Map. And the idea of it is to fundraise in order to provide ways to create the missing links. Find ways to ungap the map so that way there are more through lines. There are some awesome long lines there, but you need so much more before walking and active transportation become commonplace as a means of getting around. Maybe fine for recreation, which we'll touch on in a little bit, but it's different when it is in this form. 6 years later, do you have bollards installed at intersections as a way of preserving people's integrity so that way they don't need to stand at some distance away from an intersection, but rather can be up close to it and then ready to go when the intersection changes? I especially like this design. Benches integrated into it so that way when you face away from the street, you have an entire massive concrete block behind you. Or this one right here. This is in Steveston Village in my neighborhood. It has a rather robust and sturdy post. And then they just made it whimsical by adding a bit of rope. And yet I stand there with my son behind it and I feel secure. I feel welcomed. I feel enabled. And it didn't cost the city very much at all. 6 years later, is Ann Arbor prepared to adapt leading pedestrian intervals? We've been able to do this for years with existing technology in our signalized intersections. And I love its simplicity because this image describes exactly what it requires. 1, vehicles have to wait on red so that 2, pedestrians and cyclists get a head start. The results of this, the stats on the improvement in safety and well-being are astounding. And what I love about it is it enables people to get from place to place, even with a modicum more of dignity, with being respected, being welcomed into the street through the intersection, even in advance of vehicles. And critically, so that way, when someone is parked at a light, they will remain for a little while longer before making that right-hand turn into the place where pedestrians are about to step out onto the curb. We know these choke points, we know these crisis moments, and so we need to decide, are we going to enable or disable people? And that's the core. We decide who is enabled and disabled. We can adapt our built environment to be less disabling. We all cope with differing disabilities. I wear glasses as a means of overcoming one. I try to work out as a means of overcoming stiffness and other things, and yet we all have differing disabilities. Children aren't the best decision makers when it comes to their own personal safety. Therefore, we need to adapt our built environment to be less disabling to them, providing safe routes to schools, allowing them to bike, providing for them. And so are we resigned to where things are and just as they will always be? Or will we take small steps? At Strong Towns, we talk about our 4-step process for public investment, and I'll share that with you afterwards in a PDF that I'll share with you. But here we urge everyone to humbly identify where your community is struggling. Humbly identify where your community struggles, and then address what can be done next. What is the first smallest thing that you can do? And then do it, and then repeat it. And by doing so, it means that after 6 years of inaction, more can be done within a year than had previously been done in past years. Once you begin to build momentum, you begin to see that these things can happen. 6 years later, we would consider accepting the status quo if the outcomes were on the whole better. Thought about that as I was preparing this, that we really could consider accepting the status quo if the outcomes were on the whole better. That would be the rational decision. But they're not. They're not socially, as we deal with way more isolation and struggles and people struggling to deal with one another. It's not good for public health. The outcomes, especially for us in Canada, where we are our neighbor's keeper, and so we want everyone to be healthy for as long as possible, because we have a single payer system. And so we want, and we actually see and reap the benefits when we are healthier and more enabled. And the status quo doesn't provide that. It's not healthy for public finances. That's not healthy for private finances either. To address this, one of the things I want to share with you tonight is about the crash analysis studio that Strong Towns is launching in January. The intention is to provide a new standard of care for traffic fatalities. The studio will source and find traumatic collisions from citizens all around North America, and then bring together a panel of technical and non-technical experts for a video discussion of the crash. The intention is that we go beyond merely blaming a crash victim for wearing a dark coat, and instead analyzing the multiple factors that caused the crash, and subsequently to identify what can be done to reduce the frequency and trauma of future crashes. It's modeled on what the medical profession does. Instead of assigning blame, they seek to learn, improve, and reduce adverse outcomes over time. If there was a medication mix-up, they would say, let's make sure that there is clear labeling and even use different colored bottles. If someone's leg was taken and it was supposed to be the other one, make sure you don't just rely upon them giving you a thumbs up when you tap them on the leg to ask if that's the one that you want them to take. Have robust, rigorous systems in place. And yet when it comes to traffic fatalities and people dying in crashes all over the place, we say, well, it's just what happens. But it's not. We can change this. It's time we do the same. And so the 3 things that we are looking to do is have people nominate crashes so that they could be analyzed in part of a studio production, then learn how street design and other factors contributed to that crash and how they can be addressed. And then third, fix it. Get to it, connect with others to make your streets safer and more productive. Because the reality is that enabling mass adoption of the automobile, the personal private automobile, requires disabling mass adoption of transportation alternatives. Now, this is a separate talk that I could give as well, but enabling mass adoption of the automobile, if that becomes the default standard and the assumption that we will always have this and only this, it actually does disable mass adoption of transportation alternatives. Roads become contested spaces in ways that prohibit new transit projects or new crossings. People balk at the idea of introducing a new signalized intersection to allow people to cross safely. Or, as I hear in Ann Arbor, they fight over bike lanes and dismiss them as unnecessary and a destruction of what they value. Enabling, on the other hand, mass adoption of transportation alternatives requires a built environment that is adapted to new, although I would say old, values of safety and beauty. We model our systems on the assumptions and the values of speed and volume. That's how our traffic engineering systems are designed and weighted. And yet, as citizens, what we want is safety and beauty. We want the ability to enjoy and experience our environments at various speeds and various modes, and often to be able to just gather. And we want to do so in a way that is safe. And so we need to move towards that in the way that we design and build our neighborhoods and the way that we build our built environment. And so I'll conclude with this as an example, that we must make better investments. We have to change the environment, and you will change the transportation decisions which are made. And I think of this, the image on the right is of a redesign of a small baseball field in my community. And it was brought to the city council, and there was a lot of talk. Oh, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And look, 100 spots for vehicles, more than previously. And I wrote in, I'm a bit of a gadfly this way. I said, where are the bike parking spots? Why is it that in a town that is flat, in a town that is quite constrained, about 25,000 people live here, lots of cycling going on, and yet on the way to the ballpark and at the ballpark, there is no place to park a bike, lock a stroller, stick an e-bike, safely store your wheelchair, whatever it is that you would use as an alternative to vehicles. And the response was, well, I guess we hadn't thought about that. I said, it's been 6 years as one metric in your community, but it's been that long and longer in my community as well, when we've had to deal with so many things to think, how do we have people make different decisions? We have to change the built environment. And so my proposal to them, and I really hope they do this, is to have at least 100 bike parking spaces where you can safely secure your bicycle, in order to demonstrate our commitment that this is what we will do. We will change our environment. And in so doing, we will enable many others to do what is needed. And so I want to open it up then at this point to the rest of you. I have a question, and I'll leave it up to the Walk Bike folks to decide. We can either go into a breakout session to talk about this in smaller groups, or just take it up as a big group. But my question for you is, what does an enabling built environment look like in Ann Arbor? And try to be specific. What is it that you would want to see changed? And so let's talk about that. Let's take a moment. What does an enabling environment look like in Ann Arbor? Here, let me grab that. I'll put that in the chat. And what we can do is just open it up. Perhaps there's somebody that's the most loquacious of amongst you who wants to start. What does an enabling built environment look like in Ann Arbor? Who wants to go first?
I can go ahead and contribute something here. We have this kind of slogan locally here. It's the all ages and abilities routes. I think that's a great, jumping off point and a great base. But something that doesn't get really incorporated is I like to see the interaction of these routes with businesses and destinations and places that people go, instead of having just a route from here to there. One idea is we have the border to border trail, which It's heavily used. It's a great recreation trail, but it's pretty much separated. It's like a natural trail, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're not just going to pull off the side of the road and, grab a bite to eat or have a drink or something like that, or, go to the library, get a book. So I think it's kind of, having these kind of all ages and abilities routes, but that actually kind of connect or are preferably adjacent to, businesses, schools, services, different kinds of facilities like that.
What a great comment in the chat. A built environment that is preventive and not corrective, or preventative, sorry, and not corrective, or not punitive even. Yeah.
This is Jane Horrell. I do not live in Ann Arbor, but I live in Brighton, Michigan. And my husband was hit and killed while he was riding his bike in a park by a distracted driver, not using hands-free. And I guess I think hands-free is so important. So there's laws that are on the books here in Michigan. And I guess when I look at your question, I think hands-free phone use is very important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Jane. Wow, that's heavy. And I mean, a sobering reminder that we each know people that have been killed or maimed or wounded in so many different ways. And to think, how does that set a pal or cause us to question our own sanity when we step out? And yet that's the very opposite of what we want for everyone.
So everything you're doing, and I really appreciated your presentation, but I think hands-free phone use in Michigan is only going to help people slow down.
Yeah.
Hi, Suzanne Flowers. I will jump in. As a lifelong Michigan resident, I would love enabling legislation at the state level to set local speed limits and to also allow for camera level enforcement like so many other states do. We do have cameras that are utilized for traffic management on our interstate systems. So I feel like we have dipped our toe into that. And I think we just need a legislature that is willing to actually legislate and make hard decisions to protect the lives of all Michigan residents and visitors. That would be my wish.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful in part because by devolving it to local authorities, you actually remove it as a political football that can be passed one way or the other. It just becomes a commonplace tool that is used. And as you said, enabling legislation, that's really powerful.
For me, in terms of built environment, one thing that I would love to see is more incorporation in our community of bike and bus and walking, all sort of at nodes where all of those sort of come together. We have a bus station downtown and there's scattered bike racks and whatnot, but sort of being able to have those all connected in various places where there's a bike rack near a bus stop, even if it's a bus stop, along, we have a road like Packard that leads out of our town. There's in some places, some businesses along it where you'd have a bike rack, but it'd be nice to have a bike rack just by a bus stop in general, right? To be able to do that, or cutouts or anything that allows people to get to bus stops in a safe way, crossing the street to get to those bus stops, or to lock up their bike, and maybe a combination of all of these things, so that it's designed in such a way that people can get to their bikes and get to the buses and leave with them and whatever in a safe way, even if it's not where a store is or a big crosswalk or nexus of the city, right? In places outside of just those areas.
And that's really perceptive because it's again an adaptation of the built environment, much like a park and ride. I don't know if Ann Arbor has that, but nearby municipalities and places would have park and ride where there's public transit or rapid transit, and people are encouraged to change their behavior because there's a change in the built environment. A park and ride where you can go park and then ride. It's a lot cheaper to do that with bike racks, to create a park and ride with a cycling mindset and a walking mindset, and the ability to lock up a stroller, for example, at a site and take a bus. But instead, and all that takes is a small change of the built environment, but it's not a policy shift. It's an actual change of the way that we design and build places. And so that's a great example of that.
And actually, if I can riff on that, your suggestion was, so I have a 28-month-old son. And so the idea of being able to lock up a stroller, I'd really like to be able to do that, to be able to walk and bike or take the bus or whatever, and to have that ability. And so that's a key one. Sometimes we forget about the littler ones, right? That are with us on these journeys. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Norm and the group, again, I appreciate your presentation, very timely and solid. I went to school in Ann Arbor years ago. I actually live in Livingston County, but your topic is right on. I see the description of build environment. When somebody says something to build, it sounds expensive automatically. But I think a lot of the examples you provided are very inexpensive. And for sure, seeing the lamppost in the middle of a sidewalk is, I'd like to say I've never seen that, but we see crazy things like that all the time. But I guess I would recommend, I have a family friend who had a stroke about 8 years ago, and he's in a wheelchair primarily. And it's pretty sobering when you start to push a wheelchair around, a wheelchair, a stroller. It's pretty shocking how inaccessible so many places are. And I think Ann Arbor has that as well. And I think it exists everywhere. So I think some of these less expensive ways are just to get people to walk more, push a stroller, ride a bike. It's amazing. It seems all we talk about is a number of parking places. That's everybody's worry, and it's crazy. I've never seen more concrete that's not occupied. It's incredible. But anyways, I just thank you for your presentation. Appreciate that.
Well, it really, I appreciate that, because it really underscores like the idea of make the good visible, even before it's permanent, but just make it visible through tangible sort of adaptations of the built environment. But another thing to your comment is that me like moving my son around in his stroller when he was a kid, I realized this radicalized me. Like, and I have met you, I lead a community advocacy group in my city, and it's like stroller moms in particular, there's a group that are like, they're so like self-identifying that way. They were like, this made me a public transportation like advocate. I care about what happens on our streets, because the last thing I want is to have to reverse and go back the way that I was going because I can't get the stroller off the curb, or I don't dare to. I'm going to lose my child as I do it, or have them flop out of the. And I've seen that happen. It almost happened with my son. And so sometimes it is alerting people to what other people's experiences are, or experiencing it firsthand, that really drives that. I think I saw a few people unmute themselves as well.
Yeah, going off of that, I have an 18-month-old. And what I found really awesome about this summer and even late into the fall was us pedestrianizing a lot of downtown, opening the streets up to people. It felt a lot safer to bring my little one around and not worry about him running out into traffic, and just him being able to learn how to walk, right downtown where we're eating at a restaurant, and him being able to wander around and not worry about a car driving by hitting him. So I find it so much more enjoyable. I guess, yeah, so built environment being, I'd prefer that to be permanent and not just in the summer.
All right, and we've got about 3 more minutes left. So folks, chime in, and then we'll move on to the next section.
I think Suzanne had put up her hand again. Oh, sorry.
Well, I, for one, am very appreciative of you speaking and taking the time to inform yourself about things in our community was really, we've had a lot of speakers and stuff, and they do great, but the fact that you did so much research into our area, I think is a really powerful way to relay, sort of like to connect with us, when you're doing this. And clearly you have a history of being a pastor, because there's a couple times where I wanted to jump up and be like, hallelujah, right? So yeah, definitely feeling the energy there. All right, we got 2 more minutes. Anyone else have their hand up and want to make a comment or a question? All right, and you said that you were going to share a PDF with the group at some point, so we'll get more information for that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Raised his hand.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks. I was just gonna. Okay, so I was wondering what the intersections may be between what you've been describing and the Vision Zero philosophy, because as a city, we have, at least in words, committed to Vision Zero, and by a date certain a few years down the road. So I was just curious if, and it probably could be the subject of a whole new speech, but I was just curious about how your philosophies intersect with that.
Yeah, I think that it's a key movement. It clearly has a lot of clout and a lot of ability to move the conversation forward, and for that, there's so much in alignment. One of the core challenges, and I noticed this in one of the slides that was presented at last year's meeting, and I think this would be where Strong Towns is going to take quite a bit of a different approach, is that the 2 major groups that were identified in their literature as being the most prime opportunities to change and improve statistics in this regard was driver assistance systems and intoxication identification systems. So preventing people from getting into their vehicles when they're intoxicated and being able to identify if they're veering out of their lanes or things like that. Strong Towns would say, one, that is a strategy that assumes either mandatory adoption, which is unlikely, or I don't think that would happen, or a long, slow, gradual rollout in new vehicles. And that isn't the first place that we would turn. They identified as only a small portion changes to street design. But for Strong Towns, our perspective is it is at the street level that all of these things can be solved. Virtually every, if it requires hardening the corners of an intersection so that way people can stand behind it with bollards, go ahead and do it. Why do we have so many intersections that are unprotected, even though we have seen previously cars leave the road at that particular location? Why is it that we will not narrow roads coming into key intersections, even though many other places in New Zealand, in Australia, in various countries in Europe, they will narrow the road just before the intersection, so that way there's an immediate compulsion on the part of the driver. I'm entering into a zone that I need to slow. Instead, what do? We allow extra turning lanes. We allow 2 turning lanes plus the pass-through lane plus a double right-hand turn lane. Well, maybe double might be excessive, but what we do is we expand the width of our intersections, and as a consequence, that goes in. So Vision Zero will take action, I think, on some elements of street design. We are hand in hand with them there, but I think sometimes their focus is saying, let's figure out ways to change driver behavior. And our concern is that driver behavior changes when the built environment changes. Go back to the slide I showed of 2 streets, one, both being marked as 20 miles per hour, but only one being designed for it. The introduction of complexity, the introduction of a potential messiness or uncertainty is one of the best ways to get us to slow down. It's the reason why when you are having a conversation on a road or on a highway, you can have a long conversation about, philosophy or whatever you want. But if I'm pulling into my local grocery store, I have to tell my son, hey, not right now. My mind has to shift into focus mode because I know it's a bit chaotic, it's a bit messy, and all of a sudden I'm that much more aware. We have, I've been hearing reports of people saying there are deaths happening in large strip mall, not strip mall, but big box store parking lots because people are gunning it across these wide open spaces. But that doesn't happen when they're narrow lanes, when there's lots of cars around. And so that would be another element of that, to say it is almost exclusively the built environment that will result in changes in driver behavior. And so we should just get to it. We need that first investment right away, not the big strategy. I know we're almost at time here, but one of the things that I noticed in my own city's adoption of a Vision Zero strategy is they began with their statistics, which were where are accidents occurring or crashes occurring, but they only counted car crashes into each other. And I asked, where's the statistics on cyclists and and pedestrians and people in wheelchairs and people being hit by vehicles veering off the road at key junctures, where we repeatedly see that happen. And they didn't have they weren't collecting that data, even at the outset of a Vision Zero project. So they weren't taking the steps. And so they were identifying their hot intersections to address through wrong data, which was where are car crashes happening. And that is a huge, huge inconsistency. And maybe in fairness to Vision Zero advocates, they would say, well, we wouldn't advise that either. That sometimes the process or the problem is in the implementation. But that is one of the challenges. When we adapt our built environment, we can do so with a view to enable people rather than to disable them. And so that's what I want to leave you with. Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to join you. And next time that I'm in Michigan, I will make sure that I stop at Ann Arbor. So good to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And excellent. Want to thank our guests and want to remind folks to vote. There's a link to the voting form. Please do vote. And also want to pass it to Fred real quick to tell you a little bit about the giveaway. This is your last chance to sign up for the giveaway.
Wait, what
That's
about
right.
the
So that's fine. I've got it in front of me. But basically, so we've got the giveaway. Maybe Seth, you can provide some of the information again or a link to it if you've got it in front of you. But yeah, so we've got a variety of items for the giveaway. So be sure to participate in that as well.
Yeah, and we had talked, Matt, did we want to do a little mid-meeting giveaway?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay.
We can maybe, I don't know if you're able to see I think I sent some lists to you.
Yeah, I see the list. Is there something highlighted that I need to?
No, I would say just, since we have maybe a couple of the books and maybe one of the tune-ups, since we kind of have duplicates of that stuff. So that might be a good.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll go for a free tune-up at Sick Transit. And do we have a number? Fred, are you pulling numbers for us?
Yes, I have my random number generator ready.
All right.
Well, it's number 4.
Number 4 is Jen Proctor.
Yeah. All right. What gift do we have? What is that one?
That was
Oh,
the
free
Sick
tune-up.
Transit
Yeah. all
free
right.
tune-up. All right. I'm just taking notes. All right, and then we have we'll do one copy of each of these books. We'll go with the Strong Towns book if I can get it to focus. All right, give me a number, Fred.
It's number 28.
28. Ooh. That is Francis Connolly. Is Francis Connolly here? Nope. All right, we will touch base with Francis. All right, and then the next was the Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. All right.
Number 36.
36. Oops. Joe Meissner? Is Joe here? Nope. All right. Well, sorry, we don't have any in-house winners at the moment.
Jan was here. Jan
Oh,
was
yeah?
here.
Oh, Jen was here. Yep.
Yeah.
And I will, I'll also I'll put the link to our website here in the chat again, if anyone has not renewed or started their membership with Walk Bike Washtenaw. I'll also make the comment that if anyone is interested in Strong Towns, you can check out their website as well. It's also Member Week there. So if you want to be a member somewhere else, they're doing great work.
All right, let's hand off now to Nate Phipps. Take it away, Nate.
Wait, do I generate a number?
Oh, you're
No,
good.
no,
I think
We're up. You're good.
Okay.
We're up to the next speaker.
Fred, your duties are over as a raffle. Yeah, thank you. Matt, can you refresh that? Make sure you refresh that. Okay. Let's see what happens. Can people hear me?
No, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Will you put it on slideshow mode for effect?
Yeah, sure. Let me
All right,
find
cool.
out where that button is here.
You were so close. You're colder now. Warmer.
Is this it?
No, up top right. It says slideshow on it.
It's right next to the share button in the top right corner.
Okay, this is because my Zoom is covering it. That's why.
Oh,
So-
shoot. Okay.
That's why.
There it is.
Sorry about that, folks.
Nice. Okay, cool. So my name's Nate. I'm from Bike Alliance of Washtenaw. I'm also part of Common Cycles board. Calling in from Bicycle Lobby headquarters. You know you're in the Bicycle Lobby headquarters because there's a truing stand in one corner. There's some fender parts just randomly in a stack of mail over here, literally. And we have some cool Cars Ruin Cities and banned car stickers. Yeah, thanks, Norm, for your presentation. I increasingly am enjoying my sort of advocacy undistilled and uncut, and I feel like you sort of just gave us a uncut dose. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the transition that the Bike Alliance is going through. And Matt, you can go to the next slide. Oh, geez. The cars will park anywhere. That's one right in the middle of my slide. Go ahead, go to the next one.
Nice.
So the Bike Alliance was born in 2017. In some ways, this is a sort of its terminal point. It's sort of being reabsorbed into the Walk Bike Washtenaw organization. It was always sort of connected to formerly WBWC's efforts, and now it's just going to be more sort of officially connected to it. So this is sort of our baseline founding information, which will still hold. We're sort of changing from the Bike Alliance of Washtenaw to something like the Committee on Bike Fun. And so we're going to be sort of a committee of Walk Bike Washtenaw and focus on bike stuff. That's always been our sort of interest, is providing a space for folks that want to, just do bike stuff and focus in that area, particularly on bike community building. You can go ahead. So, the question is, where do we go from here? This was a bit of an experiment. We're at a sort of transition point, but we're actually at a point where we're really ready to hear from folks that are interested, and we're wanting to actually gin up efforts at this stage, not ramp them down, but sort of absorb and then actually sort of start to ramp up again. So our transitions look like a closer alignment with WBW efforts and functionally a subcommittee. We may retain sort of the branding of the Bike Alliance, but we're going to focus on community building, flagship events, and programming. So we've always really been about just sort of finding a place that cross-cuts all the various bike communities in Ann Arbor, and being sort of a meeting space and a way to express the needs, preferences of the bike community. But we're thinking initially anyway, we'll do that through these sort of flagship events, which I'm going to talk about. And then efforts can sort of expand as volunteer capacity allows. Frankly, the Ann Arbor advocacy community, specifically this sort of active transit advocacy community, is quite quite overlapping. That's the generous way to put it. There's a lot of people doing a lot of the same things. And so we need more people to sort of join the effort. And so if we do join, folks do join these efforts, we have some like wish list items. You'll see I put our website in the chat, but it's displaying, I think, last year's Bike Film Fest information. It's just not been updated. We just sort of don't have the juice to keep it up to date. And we'd also love to run a bike community calendar. You'll notice sort of a blank calendar there. It's meant to be sort of a clearinghouse of bike activities, bike events throughout the year. And there are many. It's just a matter of sort of getting them all in one place. Amplify and generate advocacy efforts. Again, this is aspirational just based on how much work that takes. We need more folks to join. And then, of course, I don't know what bike org, just generally support efforts of bike organizations. I think that's the idea, the support efforts of the respective organizations in town. So Matt, is this like the hook? You're moving my slide ahead. You want me to
No, I'm trying to be proactive.
I appreciate it. The upcoming events, so flagship events are sort of going to be the thing that really, I think, is where we excel currently. And there's some things we really want to see continue to happen. Handlebar happy hours, we've done different versions of this during sort of bike to work week and bike to work day. Basically, it's a time where, a group, for instance, the DDA is interested in sponsoring this. We'll buy a bunch of appetizers and folks can come and talk about bike stuff. And so we actually want to run one this winter, so sort of within the next like 2 months in the Carytown neighborhood. So you can look for dates coming. And then two of sort of our biggest events of the year are the Bicycle Film Festival and then the annual Bike Summit. And so the third annual Ann Arbor Bicycle Film Festival, if you've come in years past, it's sort of what it sounds like. It's short films focused on different aspects of cycling. And this year we're moving into the State Theater. So it doesn't sort of list that there, but we're at the State Theater. We have 2 showings. So moving from Bloom, who will host sort of the pre-party / after party, depending on what showing you go to. And we'll have some raffle prizes and it'll sort of up the experience a little bit. We are going to charge money. That's part of the deal too, but I don't think people are going to mind paying a normal movie ticket price for a really cool, unique event. And then the Bike Summit will happen always the Sunday after the Super Bowl. It makes it really easy to schedule it. We know when it's going to be, for as long as they're going to have Super Bowls. But it's a coming together of the bike community, enthusiasts and advocates, folks that are just like curious. It's the only time people really come together in that way. And we're excited to bring it back this year. We hope we can run it in person. We hope we can run sort of traditional breakouts and bring in a featured speaker. So, just look for more information on that. I think there's one more. Yeah. So if you're interested in helping, we have an email. We're, obviously really supportive of what WBW is doing and want to sort of combine efforts. But if bikes are sort of your thing, we'd be a fine place, and they're certainly not mutually exclusive. We really are going to focus on, familiar with the 5 E's, we're focusing on the sort of, maybe education, enthusiasm, sort of community building. That's really where you're going to find your people. And does anybody know, for no prize whatsoever, where this picture is taken? What storefront in Ann Arbor this picture is taken from? What's the perspective? Any ideas? Look closely. Adam has an idea, but do you know the answer already, Adam?
No.
Okay. Anything in the chat? Window across from Black Pearl. That's right.
Excellent
Go to the
guess.
next slide. Go to the next slide.
Let's see.
So yes, all my Photoshop abilities, all my graphic abilities are on display here. It's so this is Shinola, and that's the answer. It's from looking into Shinola, but you can see the reflection of Black Pearl. And there's a cool there was a cool sort of collage done by some students, and they gave us permission to sort of like take that picture and use it a bunch. So yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, WBW. On to whoever is after me.
Excellent. Thanks, Nate. This looks like this is Fred's time to update us on the bike counter project he's been working on.
All right, let me try to share my screen. Can you see my screen? Yes? Okay, that's great. So thanks for this opportunity for me to give our community a quick update of one of our bike counter project. So first, this is just an overview of my research. So I'm Fred Fan. I'm a assistant professor from the U of M Dearborn, and my main research area is on transportation safety, particularly pedestrian safety and the cycling safety. And in this meeting, I'm going to briefly talk about one of our recent project of counting bikes. So this is picture we took on our installation day. We installed this bike counter on the North Division, the new protected bike lane. I'm fairly certain a large proportion of this audience probably wrote on this part already. In case you're wondering, so this is this two tube counters gonna automatically count bicycle volume. So we started counting from just before the fall semester starts on August 25th. And let me see. Up until today, we already counted almost 20,000 bicycles in a short 2.5 months or so. And it's a quite significant number if you think about it. And we actually also built this dashboard. We published, it's an open data, open dashboard. We developed this dashboard so that not we collected this data, but we can actually share this data with our community, our city officials, traffic engineers, and other people to kind of explore the data themselves. So I'm gonna share this link. Actually, I'm gonna maybe do it now. I'll drop this link onto the chat box, and I'm gonna also show this real quick. Let me see. Where is my chat box? All right, here we go. So I'm gonna just open this dashboard here. As you can see, this is our dashboard. So we so here the top part is the bike traffic by date and time. You can see the trend of daily bike volume, and you can select the dates of your interest, the direction of the traffic, and the data resolution. You can see hourly data, weekly data, things like that. And if you hover the mouse on top of the charts, it also gives you some additional information. But if you're interested after this, you can probably check it out later. And here's a summary table. Again, since we installed this back in August, we already collected almost 20,000 bike traffic. And also, if you're familiar with this location, and the division is a one-way street, on the bike lane, you can actually see only about 3/4 of the traffic are northbound, which is along with same direction as the vehicle traffic. And on the other way, there's only about 1/4. So we have several explanations for that related to, for example, one of the thing is this bike way actually ends at Catherine. So if you want to go further, that's only a striped bike lane, only goes one direction. So it's harder for folks to ride to downtown on using the division bikeway. So also we have some additional data visualization. You can see the trend of the hourly traffic by the time of the day. You can see the highest bar is the one in the afternoon rush hour from 5 to 6, things like that. So based on what we can see here, the major pattern that we see is a very common traffic where most people are using the bicycle for commuting or utilitarian purposes, where people go to work and go home from work. For example, if we only check the days, for example, on the week in the middle of the week from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, their patterns are very similar. A little morning rush hour, and also the highest peak is in the afternoon from 5 to 6. And if we, for example, add the Saturday data, which shows a very different pattern here. So the morning traffic goes much slower, but then stay pretty much constant from say 9 a.m. to about 5 or 6 p.m. So you can do these kind of explorations yourself. All these charts are interactive. And also, when we look at the daily traffic by days of the week, we also see higher traffic during the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and the lower traffic on weekends. So this is just another indication that most people are actually using a bikeway for commuting or utilitarian rather than exercising or recreational purposes. So, and also we have some additional charts like the daily traffic by the versus the temperature, things like that. But I'll leave this to you guys if you're interested. Feel free to explore the data. And I have planned to, we actually just recently got this custom domain name. So I plan to share this data. I actually already shared the data with the DDA, but I'm going to share the data with some our city officials and other organizations as well. And if you know anyone who might be interested in looking this data, simply you can forward this URL to them, and then they have access to the data as well. So lastly, I also have prepared a few additional slides. So while we're working on this bike counter project, we want to kind of validate the counter accuracy rather than blindly trust their numbers. So we actually did some 6 hours of video data collection. We have a video camera there. We're manually counting how many bicycle passed this location. And then we can use that as a ground truth to kind of see how accurate the counter is. And we found the counter has been fairly accurate with an error rate of under 5%. So this is just some example screenshot of what we captured. You can see people actually using this bike lane here. And also in our group, we also kind of manually extracted some additional information about who are using the bike lanes, because the bike counter only gives you a count. It doesn't know whether it's you're riding, for example, e-bike versus regular bike, things like that. So based on 6 hours of data, we have a total of just about 200 bicyclists being captured. And we extracted some additional information, and I want to share some of these with you. The next slide shows the bike lane user type. So about 88% of the users are bicyclists, and we do have about 12% of other users, including 6% of e-scooters and other users, including skateboards or roller skaters, things like that. So not only the bicyclists are using the bike lanes, and also based on the video, we can kind of see whether the bicyclist was using that for recreational versus commuting. And we found the vast majority of the users actually based on it's a commuting trip rather than recreational trip. And other things, we can see that about 13% of the bicycles are e-bike that we can tell from the image. And lastly, we also have the perceived gender representation, about 30% feminine and 66% masculine. So these are some additional information that we received from the video. So for this one, for example, I think there are some other demographic study on cyclists, and typically it's about 1/4 of feminine and 3/4 of masculine. And in our case, the feminine is slightly higher, possibly because it's a protected environment where it's more inviting, or more people feel safe to use it. So that percentage is slightly higher. So this is all I have. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, and thank you for your attention. I see a question, will you be installing counters in other locations? And what is the source of counting errors? So far in this year, we just started this project. We only have a single counter, which is right now still on the division. And I'm writing some proposals that my hope is next year, we would have the funding to get a few additional counters. And I plan to put that at several other locations in the city as well. So some source of the counting errors, I'll start with a funny one, because when we did the video recording, we did see occasionally cyclists will bunny hop the tube just for fun. And those are absolutely not counted because that's not how tube counter works. We do see that. And sometimes there are things like a moped would go through, things like that. But in general, the error is less than 5%.
Excellent, Fred. Thanks. I don't know if there's any other questions, or we'll have some time for public comment maybe at the end.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. Next up is Larry to give us a rundown of one of our challenges from the last year, if you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm ready. I just wanted to talk about one of the fiascos from the last year, which was what happened with the East Medical Center Drive Bridge redesign. And it illustrates the kind of problems we face and the importance of having a group like ours to at least face these things and try to promote some better decisions. I just like to put up a few maps here to show things. This is a Google Earth view of the area. If you can see my cursor, the diag is down in the lower left here. North Campus is up in the upper right, and the way between campuses is here. This intersection of concern is here, where I'll zoom in here. If you can see that, where Fuller meets Maiden Lane and East Medical Center Drive. And this is the East Medical Bridge over the railroad. The bridge is in poor condition and needs to either be repaired or rebuilt, and the decision has been made to rebuild it. The university wanted to see an extra lane added for vehicles. We didn't take any position on that, if they can justify that, but we were hoping to do some things to improve walking and biking in the area. The anticipated cost of the whole project is in the order of $7 to $8 million. The university plans to pay for all of the cost of the added vehicle lane plus half of the cost of the bridge redevelopment. The city hired a consultant to put together a design. And let me show you first how this fits into the bigger picture of the potential campus-to-campus bikeway here. If I can get it here. Okay, this is from our proposal for a campus-to-campus bikeway. This is on our website if you want to look at it. But this shows the route we're proposing in detail. Subsequent slides here would show detail on all of the segments here. And the area we're looking at here is segment number 4 here near that intersection. So this is a potential for a good quality, safe way to bike between campuses that would be for people of all ages and abilities. Then, based on this situation, we put together, whoops. Got to get the right place here. Okay, can you see the where it says Plan B2B trail near Fuller Main Lane? Does that show up there?
Yep.
Okay. This is from the statement we put together about the project, which we circulated to city council people and city staff and a number of other people. And this shows this intersection in the context of city plans. This has long been in the city parks plan and the city non-motorized transportation plan to have trails under all of these bridges. Back when this intersection was redesigned back in the 1980s, all these bridges were built high with concrete pads underneath, and the intent was to connect trails under those. Now the bridges were built, the roads were rebuilt, but the trails still haven't been built in over 30 years here. This city plan was reiterated by a city council resolution in 2015, reinforcing the long-term commitment to these projects. The city council also said that these improvements should be made before or concurrently with any improvements to the intersection. So since this bridge project affects this intersection leg here, it's an appropriate time to make some improvements. So we propose two things here. Widening the sidewalk on the west side of the bridge here to make the connection from West Medical Center Drive down to here and then around and under this underpass connection here. The city added to the proposed contract the construction of this underpass connection, but not to widen the west sidewalk. The city council also had a proposal to use the added vehicle lane that the university wanted for multimodal purposes. Initially, city council approved that, but later they rejected that. Now to widen the sidewalk on the west side here would require an extra support beam under the bridge, which would cost an estimated $500,000 in the context of a $7 to $8 million project. Seems well worth it to improve the safety of walkers and bikers. But things at this point got even worse. The university and the consultant then proposed not widening the west sidewalk, but actually narrowing it, moving 2.5 feet from that sidewalk over to the east side where it's not needed for bicyclists, because the bicycle connection here between the campuses is going to come down around this way and use West Medical Center Drive and come down here. So it's not needed to be wider on the east side. But unfortunately, they proposed that and city council apparently reluctantly approved that. So unless things change, we're stuck with a situation which will actually make things worse for bicyclists and walkers. We've offered a series of statements, a blizzard of emails and phone calls to city staff and city council people and others, but so far things have not gone the way we were hoping on this. So this is what happened, unfortunately, and as to why it might have happened, there were some problems with the process. Initially, this was not presented to the Transportation Commission of the city. It belatedly went back to Transportation Commission after some decisions had already been made. So there was limited public input, almost no Transportation Commission input, and the design was basically predetermined by, apparently by the consultant. And it's odd because this is opposed to city policies and university policies. City has its 820 plan, which requires a large increase in biking and walking to reduce vehicle travel and increase non-motorized travel. This decision conflicts with that intent. There's also the city's Vision Zero goal to reduce fatal and injuries, crashes, to try to eliminate those. It also goes against that goal. And the university's President's Commission on Carbon Neutrality proposed in their document creation of a safe bike route between the campuses. So it also goes against the university's plan. And I guess I attribute part of this to the communications breakdown that happened with COVID. It was difficult to meet in person and look at things over a table, look at maps with people and point out the issues here. And trying to do these things by email and phone calls and presentations to city council at their meetings was not an effective way to make an impact. I don't understand the reason for the university's reluctance here on biking infrastructure and walking infrastructure. And they've been at odds with us on some other issues. And what we got here then is a major mistake on a major investment, major infrastructure project that we may be stuck with if it's not changed for 40 years, which is the probable life of this bridge. So it's a major public policy failure and a major misdirection of public funds. this is not exactly an uplifting saga, but one to illustrate, to show the kinds of problems that we're still facing. And I hope that we can still make progress on this. If people are interested in getting involved in this, there's some other things that we want to get moving on the border trail, which on the north side of this intersection. We'd like to get moving on that to make those long plan connections. So that's the end of this not uplifting, but realistic presentation. Any questions or anything?
Larry, this is Ian. I'm just curious if there's been any recent news or activity on this. I haven't kind of kept up since a few months ago.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any. There is something regarding the border trail component of it. As you may know, there's good progress on the border connection between Bannerman Park and Barton Park here in River Drive. We're hoping in a couple of years to get that moving. That's kind of in process. So after that, we're hoping to shift some emphasis to this gap in the border trail here. A university student came forward just recently that we met with, and we're hoping that she and some of her colleagues can get this together, some advocacy from the university side to work on the border aspect, and also the campus to campus aspect. Other than that, I don't know of any change in the city. Suzanne, maybe you, if you're still here, know if there's been any progress on the city side, or where the redesign from the consultant is right now.
I do not know anything. I can honestly say with clear consciousness, I truly don't.
Would be nice to know where the consultant is on this if possible. And
Larry, I can reach out to Raymond and find out in the morning. I'm happy to get back. I'm happy to get in touch with him.
Okay, if you can let us know and find out if there's any further opportunity for engagement. I think the original consultant contract called for community engagement, but it may be past that point, but I'm hoping not. I always like to be optimistic, you know.
So Larry, I do have one. I don't know if I didn't catch if you already mentioned this, but there was a memo from the city administrator some months ago, calling into doubt whether the underpass beneath the East Medical Center bridge could even be built, because they thought that MDOT, which now owns that rail line there, would not approve of it because it's too close to their right of way, which is, I mean, it's like the one, it makes the story even grimmer, right? It's like the one thing commitment that we sort of got, it could crumble away in front of us because of that issue. So that's something to watch out for.
Interesting question, and maybe Suzanne, you can find out about that too. I hadn't heard about that. If you've looked at that area, the trail underpass would actually be outside of, there's some abutments for the bridge there, and the trail would be outside of those abutments from the railroad, so it'd be well removed from the railroad. If there's a problem there, it'd be good to find out about it and get that resolved, because it shouldn't be a problem. And also on the underpass that's being built between Bannerman Park and Barton Park and here in River Drive, that's going to be going right under the railroad there, and that's closer to the railroad. So if that can be approved, I would think that a project here outside of the bridge abutments would not be a problem, but we should certainly get that resolved. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, we would think. They're famously hard to work with, so.
Yeah, Larry, on this is Craig Wood, a comment. I agree that's disappointing news. It's actually quite surprising, I guess, given the conflict in that intersection between the hospital, employees and the movement of bicyclists to the campus. I guess as you look around the country, the most powerful tool is to eliminate conflict, and going an underpass is always an amazing solution, and it works everywhere. It's just surprising that all of a sudden the door is closing on that opportunity. And 40 years is a long time to wait. And it'd be disappointing for people to talk about it for 30 years saying we should have done something different, but anyways, that's,
Yeah, it would make it much safer and much quicker for bicyclists because they wouldn't have to cross East Medical and deal with that busy intersection there at Fuller. And
Yep.
bicycles go much more quickly, wouldn't have to wait for the light. And since the road is planned to be widened due to the extra vehicle lane there, it's going to be more difficult for people to cross there in any case. And in this area, there are thousands of walkers and bicyclists every day going in this area. The city did a count some years ago. There's heavily used by bikers and walkers. And if this campus bikeway gets built, it would be much more heavily used than it is now by bicyclists. So it's
it might be timing for the presentation on the bike counter would be, I mean, I'm blown away by the numbers, but I can't imagine what that number would be at that near that intersection. It's probably 100,000. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But
well, when the city did a count back, I think in 2006, there were, I think it was over 4,000 walkers per day near that intersection and several hundred, like 700 or 800 bicyclists per day near that intersection. And of course, if these improvements are made, there'd be many more bicyclists. And not only that, but people go between those campuses all the time, and a lot of them have to take a bus, and a lot like to bike if they had the opportunity. If we had a student group that did a survey, that a good share, like a third of the people taking the bus, would prefer to bike if there were a safe facility there. They would like to bike if there were a safe facility. So there's demand for it if we build the infrastructure, and it would offload the buses there. They're very crowded. So there's lots of good reasons to build this.
So Larry, this is Jane Horrell. So is the next step, is there nothing we can do?
Well, we'll see what Suzanne finds out tomorrow about where things stand. There will be some things that you can do, at least on the border part, which is on the north side of that intersection. What we have is the border trail be on the north side, the campus-to-campus bikeway at that point would be on the south side, but then they'll cross at the next bridge to the east there where Fuller crosses the Huron River. So that it actually interacts, the C2C and the B2B trails will interact at that point. So I wouldn't despair. If you have interest in this, I'd say let us know, and we'll see if there are any good ways to make some progress, either on the campus-to-campus part or on the border part.
Thanks.
Great. I want to be mindful of our time here. So thank you, Larry, for your presentation. And next up, we have highlights from 2022 and looking forward to 2023 with Matt. Take it away, Matt.
Okay. Hopefully that's not a screaming child you guys hear in the background. But let me get my screen up here. Just be ready for what comes next here. All right. Okay, so my name is Matthew Catanzarite. I'm the current chair of Walk Bike Washtenaw. If you all don't know that or haven't met me yet once before, can everybody see and hear what's happening right now?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm thankful for all the great work we've accomplished recently. It's always great to hear and see other people sharing our messages on social media and at council meetings and our own meetings and seeing what everybody's working on. I definitely want to acknowledge the fact that our annual membership meeting serves as the opportunity to share the efforts and issues and projects that the organization is involved in, how we continually push to make biking and walking safe, comfortable, convenient, and commonplace for everyone in the community. So if you haven't already, just pat yourself on the back for the work that you guys are doing in your own communities or our community, if they're one and the same. First, about our new name, Walk Bike Washtenaw. We're kind of hoping that this new branding will help improve our advocacy efforts moving forward by keeping it basic and still emphasizing what we're about in a way that's both efficient, closely aligned with the nationwide network of other walk bike organizations. One moment, sorry. All right. Yeah, a cleaner and closer association with future events throughout the county may, hopefully inspire advocacy and volunteer efforts on the rise. Definitely want to give a thanks to board member Dr. Fred Fang. I'm extremely excited about the work that he's, his research, and I can't even imagine all the potential benefits that we're gonna see in Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, being that we're like the host for his research here. And kind of carrying on this theme that you can't improve what you don't measure. I think one of the important things for us looking forward is just it's going to be vital that we capture positive responses and experiences to the new infrastructure and policy developments like the State Street redesign and the no turn on red policy in order to support, with similar projects moving forward in the future. Oh, here, I got the next slide. I can show that. Will kind of show some of this. There's the headline. I'm sure people have seen it. It's, kind of a funny headline. Ann Arbor's new curbless design State Street opens to traffic. It's just a, opening to traffic. It was during construction, it was, I guess, closed to traffic, still open to people, and now it's open to traffic, also open to people as well. One of the more rewarding aspects in having a nurturing walking, biking community are the events that showcase our power in numbers. 2022 was host to a number of opportunities to socializing, including Bicycle Film Fest, which is going to be bigger and better this coming year. Bike to Work Day, I'm going to start recalling it as Bike to Wherever Day, which is part of the Bike Week, Bike Month that culminated with Bike-a-Palooza. There was a cargo bike rally. I'm a cargo bike owner myself. It's always fun, the attention you get riding around, and I can only imagine riding in a group of a whole bunch of people. That last year's cargo bike rally was kind of an opportunity for the public to see what was going on and test out how these mobility options are provided by cargo bikes. Hopefully we'll see more of them, and it would be great to see a whole bunch of them riding around town. And it kind of segues to the bike party, formerly known as Bike In, the last Friday of the month from spring to fall roughly. It's a nice family-friendly ride around town. I see a lot of potential for spin-off rides with this group. It's kind of like the rolling carnival, as I like to consider. I've also got a picture here in the upper right hand as the the large bike parking racks that come out in the spring and summer. When I see those, I'm always cheerful for the warmer weather. And it's always sad to see them go away in the wintertime too. Whoop, moving too fast here. So, each new implementation of project advances walking and biking safety in Washtenaw County, which bring its own unique sets of challenges and deniers. I hesitate to spend too much time on the details of bike lane blockage. It's been covered in many places from both sides of the argument. But one of the things I find particularly fascinating is seeing how other communities have relied on public reporting for enforcement and ticketing. It's given the name to the bike lane bounty. I'm not sure if folks have seen that. I'm sure we'd share those articles. And it's kind of why I don't really want to dwell too much on it, because I'm not sure, the question is what level of enforcement is appropriate or reasonable for this. I mean, some enforcement certainly, but I can reasonably understand why certain public safety doesn't want to spend all time in bike lanes just ticking people. And there's different types of bike lane blockages that don't get addressed. You see here construction lane blocking of bicycles, and then there's the statistic that's associated with this, 245 crashes in the last 5 years. You have to wonder if there's any relationship between bike lane blockages and accidents and crashes, trying to maneuver around those. Let's see, as described earlier, the East Medical Center Drive Bridge represents one of the challenges we face to reach walking and biking goals. In that case, it was urging those to change in charge to accommodate non-motorized routes that provide much needed connectivity. A result of our outreach efforts, while still ongoing, was establishing new partnerships with organizations like the Graduate Employees Organization at the university, who shared our desired outcomes. Short near-term work, likely requiring our community attention in the coming months, is ensuring that the city of Ann Arbor follows its complete streets policy when resurfacing streets that would benefit from facilities, and specifically focusing on Platt Road. That was the one that came up this last year, but it provides an example that every time there's a road resurfacing that has potential to become a bike facility or provide bike facility or all ages routes, when it makes sense, it's always something that we have to fight for. It's never a given. So it's kind of a good time to relook at that. And that kind of goes into one of the things that we've discussed looking at next year is the board is revisiting the policy regarding non-motorized facilities this year. The last time we updated that was 2010, so it's probably due. And primarily this would be an effort to better align and support recent plans, the city plan of moving together towards Vision Zero and the county climate action plan. Both have some kind of ambitious ideas in them that it would be nice to make sure that we're all on the same page with our own non-motorized facilities policy. Let's see, no, and then in the top right or top left, there's the picture of the new State Street redesign. And while admittedly informal and anecdotal, I'll look and see the submitted C-Click FIS issues just to see if there's some kind of shared real world experience with regards to walking and biking concerns across the city and county that I can relate to. And a recent concern related to the pedestrian push buttons had me recalling my own experience. I live near a major intersection, and if I want to kind of get anywhere towards closer to town at Packard Stadium, I have to cross them both inbound and outbound. I don't really have much else to say on that. It's just ultimately I concluded that my experience is that the push buttons, the way that they're being utilized now, they just prioritize cars and kind of disregard pedestrians. So it's kind of funny to see that they were implemented and just how they're implemented. Let's see. And then, so I guess part of it, I just include this slide here because for the flyer for the meeting here, one of the things was, talking about innovative ideas that can help Washtenaw become more pedestrian and bike friendly. So the photo on the top right, if people are not familiar with the story, it was, 400 some people moving 2,000 books by hand across from one library, an old library to a new library along a greenway in Ypsilanti there, or Superior Township. I'm not sure exactly which one that was, but I don't necessarily think that this is going to be a solution to some of the problems we face, but I do think it's a fascinating way to look at some of these, a different way to look at some of the issues we talk about, Amazon trucks blocking bike lanes. I mean, here's 400 people moving 2,000 books using a greenway. So it's different approaches, I guess. On the bottom left corner is the rendering of a 130-year-old Bell Road Bridge slated for reuse as a bicycle pedestrian crossing of Mill Creek at the edge of downtown Dexter to fill border-to-border gaps. So I'm always up for that. That's kind of a green transportation, green reuse, green construction. And then kind of here on the bottom, we're kind of starting to look ahead. At least personally for me, I can't remember what it was that inspired me, but the lower right corner is a traced out kind of route, a tour to Washtenaw, so to speak, I guess. It's possible to kind of traverse this 131 miles. I might give it a try this summer. I think it was too late in the year when I felt the urge to put that together, but something to look forward to, or just know that it's possible. And then lastly, just the bike summit. We're really going to try to, if there's anything that you heard here that you're interested in or want to talk more about, or something that we didn't cover, be prepared to bring it to the bike summit if you're able to. That's pretty much it. There's going to be a lot of opportunity in the future to provide input on different funding opportunities with, millages for climate, millages for transit. I know these are a little bit further out from what Walk Bike usually talks about, but they are all related in other ways, and I don't see why we shouldn't be approaching those with some input. So I think that's it with I guess it's just a membership drawing.
All right. Are there any questions on what Matt talked about, or anything in general that folks want to talk about before we close out the evening with the drawing? Any other issues in terms of the community that you want to bring up? Okay, we've got a hand up. Yep, go ahead.
I was just curious, how is the organization interfacing with, like, let's say the Washtenaw Road Commission or like Watts on non-motorized planning?
Larry or Seth, you can probably take that one.
Yeah, and Seth could too. We over the years we've had contact with them. Sometimes we've been successful in progress. Sometimes we haven't. As you may know, Watts is the planning agency for federal funds in the county, for federal transportation funds. The road commission, of course, is the road commission on county roads. Seth, would you like to talk about your experience with the road commission regarding Packard improvements? One of our priority projects on the website, we have a map of priority projects, needs to be updated, but one of the priority projects is improving Packard between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. And we had to go around with the road commission, which Seth led. You want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. In trying to do improvements basically between where Packard and Eisenhower meet and Ypsi city limits along Packard there, where there are now at least bike lanes in the Ann Arbor section. I mean, they're basic. They're not lanes that most people would use, but it's something, and it's more than we could get out of the road commission. And we've met. I'm trying to think. We probably met with them 2 or 3 times, but yeah. I'm not sure the best way to get them to move. We don't have regular engagement with them, although if there's folks in the townships who would like to pick up that ball, we would certainly love to have some folks out there to engage with them more regularly. But the way they are structured, the way all their funding comes, and then just the, I guess, institutional inertia of how they do things is they are the road commission and they are not the street commission. So they tend to deal in cars, and we'll get some token bike lanes sometime. They did say, I think the long-term plans on Packard are to put bike lanes in, but it's when they can widen the curb lines. So which is not really what we want, because that's just a faster road with bike lanes. So I think more engagement is needed. I think speaking with the road commissioners are appointed by the county commissioners. And so there have been some new commissioners appointed who are more open and forward thinking. But the staff at the road commission is, they do what they do, and I think the road commissioners tend to defer to staff, because the staff are the professional engineers, and the road commissioners are just guiding policy. So I think we need some more time, and maybe if we can get more folks to speak up to the road commissioners and the county commissioners, that hopefully we can get some changes to start happening. Just as a means of comparison, chatting with the road commission sort of reminded me of my meetings with City of Ann Arbor engineers like a decade ago. So I feel like Ann Arbor's made some progress in the last decade. So I think we just need to get that ball rolling with the road commission. So that's the long short story.
And just to clarify, the road commission deals with county roads that are outside of cities, basically. So the town between Ann Arbor, basically between US 23 and Ypsilanti, that part is of Packard is under road commission jurisdiction. And likewise, the county roads all around the county that are outside of cities and villages.
Hey, does the organization generally advocate for, let's say, like route designations as sort of an interim step, or is there any other citizen tools that you might recommend for, I don't know, I guess roadways that are issues in the area?
I'm not clear about the question about improving county roads in general.
So I guess in particular, like, I come from a little bit of a background on bike ped planning, and it seems like designating things as a bike route might be like a first step, maybe a stopgap measure in some situations for some of the county dirt roads. to improve safety. And I was just curious as to what the stance of the organization is on route, kind of like formalizing certain routes as a first step towards improving safety.
Well, as far as gravel roads, unpaved roads, there generally wouldn't be too much of a problem biking on those if you have a suitable bike. I mean, the traffic levels are low. I think the bigger problem is on paved roads, which often lack even a paved shoulder in the county. And, you know, we've mentioned, and they're aware that it's better to have a paved shoulder just to make the road last longer, because you know, this county roads break up from the edge in because the water gets under there if there's no paved shoulder. So that would be a big step, I think, if the county could just have more of a policy to put on paved shoulders, which provides a better biking facility. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. We're residents on Warren Road, which is like the first big dirt road north of Ann Arbor, and we've seen the cycling community just largely embrace, loving that as like as a major starting point for a lot of rides, as well as a lot of running groups that use the road. But at the same time, we have different roadway users like different parent groups and students who drive on that like it's just incompatible. So we're just trying to find ways to make that safer for all users, if at all possible.
Yeah, it's I guess it's a challenge to get funding for improvements on a gravel road when there's so many problems on the main county roads. But I sympathize with the problem. There's people a lot of times drive fast on the gravel roads, which in a way that's incompatible with other uses.
And I don't know if the road commission, well, I don't know that I guess I have never engaged them in that, if they would be open to do in some sort of signage that's saying it's a bike route. But even if they aren't, perhaps they're willing to give permission to have somebody else fund some signs that can go in their right of way as a starting point.
Yeah, and actually on that topic, I live in the Brighton area in Livingston County, and there on gravel roads, there are some that have designated as like natural beauty roads, which is something that gives it some type of a historic preservation. So it's something to think about. I don't know if that helps answer that question, but it kind of prevents the evolution of a gravel road to become all of a sudden an interstate highway or a 2-lane interstate, put it that way. So
yeah, thanks everyone. Yep, thank you.
All right, we've got another giveaway, I believe. Is that correct? So let's go ahead and do that.
You want me to run this, Matt? Or you?
Oh yeah, sure, that'd be great. Yep.
Sure.
Let me know if you need anything from me. I got.
All right. I guess I'll just go back to the top of the list. We got one more free tune-up at Sick Transit. If Fred wants to throw another number at me.
Hey, Fred, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Ian. I said it's 74.
74. All right, let's see who we got. 74 is, oops, sorry. Fred Esterbrook. All right. And next on the list is the Ready to Ride starter kit from Urban Rider Cargo Bikes.
Uh, 24.
24. That is Jeff Gaynor, who's also not here. All right. Next is the Lumos Kickstart helmet. A $200 value.
69.
69. That is Benjamin Smith. All right. Down the list, the $25 Bivouac gift card.
$73.
Cyrus Nahidi. Where is Cyrus tonight? All right, and we have one more copy of Strong Towns. Which doesn't want to focus.
36.
Oh, we have to pick another one. He already,
Oh, we had 36 earlier.
Mr. Meissner already won
Okay.
that same book.
25.
25. Nathan Vogt. All right, and last but not least is the Confessions of a Recovering Engineer book.
88.
88. Matthew Nod. Is Matthew here? No. Sorry, folks. Maybe we should have kept it closed to attendees only, but we had it open to all members.
Did you give away the Ipsy running company stuff yet? We could.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, sorry.
We could limit that to the group of people that's here. If you're able to
Yeah,
extract that list somehow or pull a random one out of there.
We can do that.
How are we gonna do that? Are we gonna keep drawing until someone from the audience wins?
I don't have a good method. I guess you can just keep drawing numbers till someone that's here wins.
Well, there's 18 participants, so draw
Okay.
a number between 1 and 18, and if it's a board member, then go
Okay.
the next up or down or something like that.
Okay, sounds
And
good.
just go through your list of people.
I'll use
you'll- Yeah,
Okay, how about I draw the number and someone else look at their list?
Okay.
Okay, 1 to 18, right? 1 to 17 now.
17, there you go.
Okay, all right. Here we go. It's number 2.
Oh, that's me. Let's pick another one.
12.
12 is Andrew Schneider. Congratulations, Andrew.
Excellent.
All right, I think that's all we got. I will be emailing our winners, which unfortunately is not most of you. But thank you for coming.
I think next time we need to limit it to just people who have actually shown up.
Yes,
see.
maybe that was poor decision on our part.
Yeah. All right. So Matt, you want to finish up?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really not much else to say. It's just going to be, thank you for everybody for coming. I really appreciate all the work that you do. If you didn't know, just feel free to join one of our board meetings. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Google group, volunteer. If you all haven't already done all those things, I'm sure you've found out about it somehow. Thanks to Norm Van Eeden Petersmen for joining us from Strongtown. Thanks to Strongtowns. Thanks to the League of Michigan Bicyclists and Ann Arbor Velo Club. Both those are great membership partners that we have. If you're you're a member of us, you might as well be a member of them as well. Thanks to Urban Rider Cargo Bikes, Human Electric Hybrids for the prizes, 6 Transit Cycles, Ypsilanti Running Company, and Bivouac. And thanks to everybody that joined this meeting tonight. Thank all you guys for coming. Appreciate it. That's it. Have a good evening, everybody. Look
Thank
forward to
you.
next year.
Thank you all. I learned a lot.
Appreciate it so much. All
Yeah.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Good night.